Okay, someone's asked a really good question, and it was, how can you do um, smooth movement and still get this like two-frame animation like in the Invader? Um, Now, when I built the level system, um, I built it so you could. So let's just have a quick look at this. In Invader, it uses this action routine. Now, this is called for you by level set because Invader inherits from two states, and two states inherits from character, and character inherits from level set. Now, so if we look at level set's got this little bit of code in it. It picks up your time delay, um, and it saves this in a thing called this.timer delay. Now, the game loop calls the current level the tick method and passes it the timer information, the delta, so how much time has passed this frame. But it does this little bit of code. Um, what it does, it looks to see if you've actually got a timer delay, so you wanted a timer on the level. And if there is, it adds the fraction of time for the current frame onto what is effectively the current level time. If this goes over the timer delay you set, then what it does is it resets the timer, which is what this line does. I won't go into too much detail about why it's got minus and everything. And then it calls the action routine. So if we look at Invader, when that set up, it had a timer that passed through of 1. So that means that this routine that I've said, the action one, will only happen every second. Now, the reason that's a pain is because two states needs it for its animation code. And this is a bit of code that does the animation, flicks between the two sets of bricks. Um, so it's governing the speed. But the question was, can I do that but still do like some smooth movement? Well, the answer is yes, you can, but we need to make a minor modification to the base level code, which is in level set. So in level set JS, all the action calling is trapped behind this little timer. Is the timer up? Um, so what we want to do is we want to provide a facility that we can say, right, well, regardless of any action you want, we're going to give you a chance to manipulate and look at the timer yourself. Okay, so we're going to do that by creating another routine that's going to be empty, like this action one. So I'm going to come up with a name for this. I'm going to call it raw time, raw timer. I'm going to call it raw timer. So I'm in levelset.js. It's going to get past the delta value, and it's not going to have any function, okay? Because we're going to create our own versions in the inherited. I keep going like that. You can see me, but yeah, in the ones that inherit, so like Invader. And what I'll do is I'll mess about with Invader to show you how easy this is to implement. Okay, so I've created this method that we're going to override in our inherited level classes. So we need to make sure that when we get the tick that we always run this. So we're going to say raw timer delta. Oops. So I'm saying that whenever I get the tick from the game engine, I'm going to run the raw timer code, which currently has nothing, and I'm going to give it the fraction of time for the frame. Okay, and I'll show you how to use that as well in this bit of code I'm going to do. Right, okay, so I'm going to save that. I've got this configured on my level data, so I'm forcing the Invader screen, number 13, to come up. That's what it is on my system. Right, so theoretically, all I've got to do is I'm going to go back to Invader. I still want the animation to happen once a second, okay? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to now create my version, my overriding version of rawtimer. Okay, so in Invader, I'll just put it below action. I'm going to say rawtimer, and it's going to have a parameter, which is going to be the delta value. And this is where I'm going to put my movement code. Okay, so here it was before. So I don't actually want the movement code there anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to put it in rawtimer. Okay, and I'm going to tidy that up a little bit so the tabs are right. I don't want to do this code here, but I don't want to delete it yet. So I'm actually going to comment it out. So I'm going to do a block comment. So I'm going to do slash forward slash asterisk, and then I'm going to do below it asterisk forward slash. And what that does, you can see it's gone green. It's commented out a block of lines. Okay, so I'm not deleting it, but I'm just keeping it in case I want it for future reference. Right, now, in terms of this, I will want the invader bricks to wrap, but obviously this is now going to run, and the default timer is 50 times a second. So this rawtimer code is going to run in 1 second 50 times. So I don't want to move 25 pixels 50 times a second. I'll leave it like that so you can just see the effect first, and then you'll see that you don't want to do that. It's going to move quick. So let's save that. So I've not made much change. I've added to level set that rawtimer line, and there's the rawtimer function. In Invader, I've then put my own overriding version of it, and I've just copied the movement code in. So I'm just going to save that, go back, refresh my browser, and you'll see that the Invader moves stupidly quick once the level starts. In fact, it's broken it. I don't know what it's done there. Rawtimer is not defined. Oh, that's interesting. So look. Rawtimer. Oh, I didn't put this. Well, that's a bit of a stupid mistake to make. Right, go back. Level data. Level set. Yeah, you can see you have to put this in front of things to make a reference to this object. That's me being just dozy. So this dot rawtimer. See, that's another thing. If you bring the debugger up, it will give you clues as to what you've messed up. Let's refresh that. Let it go again. I'll leave the debugger up this time so you'll see any errors straight away. But you can see, whoa, it's moving every frame 25 pixels. Okay. But once we start talking about movement in frame rates, what we need to do is we start needing to talk about pixels per second instead. Okay, because the actual speed there is 25 times 50. So we're actually saying 25 times 50 pixels every second. So we don't want that. So let's go back and I'll show you how to rewrite this code. So if I want to move it at 25 pixels per second, what I need to do is use that delta value. This is what that delta value is for. It's a fraction of a second. So that should be 0.02. Okay, so if I want to, let's say I want to move 100 pixels in 1 second, I'm going to say 100 times delta. So that's the amount of horizontal movement I want to make. All right, let's just save that and see if that looks a little bit better. So that means in every movement, effectively, it's going to be 2 pixels. So it's still going to move moderately quick, but you'll see. So in 1 second, it moves 100 pixels because that's what the delta is useful for. So if for whatever reason I managed to speed this game engine up and use a completely different timer system, and I was able to run at 100 frames a second, my code would still work for the Invader because I'm saying in a whole second I want you to go 100, but we know that we're only running for a fraction of a second because this is a game loop. And this is effectively how games work. So we multiply by that fraction and we say, right, well, if you're running at 100 times a second, give me 1/100th of that. If I'm running at 20 frames a second, give me a 20th of that. Okay, so if you want to get that granular access to the timer, you can do that. If you want to do your own like little delays and like do some movement every 2 frames or something, then there's nothing to stop you counting frames. So if you look at level set, that's the clue as to how this works. We have a delay value and we add the delta on. So in the invader, so that's enough if you just want to move it every single frame. But let's say in the invader, we want us to move it every 2 frames. So I can create a variable. I'm going to call it frame count and I'm going to set it to 0. And then I'm going to have, well, I'm going to do it raw. Okay. Right. So every time the raw timer activates, I'm going to say this dot frame count plus plus. So add 1 to it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if this dot frame count is greater than or equal to 2, then I'm going to do this code. So I'm going to put a set of brackets around it all. So you can see they're highlighted in red there. I want to move all these ones in. So I'm going to highlight them all and press the tab key and that moves them in. And I can see that that's part of that code. I'm also going to reset the frame count. So I'm going to say this dot frame count equals 0. So this time it's going to move at 100 pixels per second, but I'm actually slowing that down a little bit. So when I save it and refresh now, so you'll see it won't be as smooth because it's basically when it counts to 2, and you can see it's not as smooth, but it allows me to mess about with the timer. I could do it all in seconds, so I can have this frame time or game level time or something like that, I might call it. So I'm going to change the name of it to level time. Instead of doing this, I'm going to say level time, add on to it whatever the current frame time is, the delta. And then here I can say level time if it's greater than not 2, but I don't know, let's put 0.1, so every 10th of a second. So this is easier to think than counting frames. Sometimes you count frames, sometimes you want a time. And then what I'll need to do is I'll need to reset. But if you set it back to 0, you won't be taking count of rounding errors. So what we do, if you look at level set, what I do is I take what I was counting up to off. So in Invader, because I put 0.1, I'm going to say minus equals 0.1. And then, as we'll discuss next year, floating point numbers have got rounding issues and precision errors. So we're trying to like minimize that by doing this. You could just set it to 0, but you would get some like sort of inconsistencies. So I'm just subtracting 0.1. So if it went a little bit over 0.1, I'm pulling that back for the next timer. Okay, so this will move every 0.1 of a second. It depends what you want to do. I mean, ask questions if you've got any specific things. It's good that you're interacting. So let's refresh that. And you say every 10th of a second it should update position. It's still going to animate separately. So you've now got 2. Let's do it every half a second and you'll be able to see it a bit easier. So now I've got this all timer based. It makes it easier for me to think of the numbers. So half a second. Otherwise I'd have to think 25 frames. But I can do that because I do a lot of this in different environments. So that's moving in half a second. Stuttery steps. So if you want it buttery smooth, you wouldn't bother doing that at all. You'd just say, well, we don't want any of that. If you wanted to really catch it and you say, oh, I don't want to edit this, take this code away, just do that. Put it at 100th of a second, because you know that that's going to be, well, put it at that, or you can actually put, so if you do that, it will go back to being smooth. Probably not the best way of doing it, to be honest, but I'm just showing you options. And you'll see that that'll go back to smooth scrolling. There you go. Anything other than a whole pixel is going to be a fraction of a pixel, so you'll get sort of like a strangeness happening, a shimmer effect, because the graphics card's trying to draw pixel, half a pixel and things like that, which it'll attempt to do, but it has to blur and things to do it. Okay, so for just doing a nice smooth scroll, I don't need this level time. I can leave that there, but I don't actually need to do all this other stuff because I'm accessing the timer directly. Okay, so I can comment all, delete all that, and just have that code. Again, that's the indent's manky on that now, so I'm going to highlight those and do Shift Tab, and that pulls it back. So just check I haven't totally messed it up. Go back, refresh, and I'll just summarize what we did to enable that smooth access to the timer. There you go. So if I want it to move 1 pixel every frame, I can just set it to 50. And it'll run half as slow as what it's going there. You might get a little bit of shimmer because of how it draws, but yeah. So it's moving 1 pixel every frame because I'd set that up to be 50 times the delta, and the delta is 0.02 by default. There may be slight delays in that because Chrome might not run the timer correctly and it might stretch the time out a little bit. Right, so just to summarize, to give you access to a raw time information, you have got to add in levelset.js rawtimer, an empty routine really called rawtimer that has a parameter called delta, and then just 2 braces to say nothing. Then in the tick, you have got to add that line so that it always gets called. And then all you need to do in any of your levels that you want to access the raw speed of the timer, just create a raw timer routine that accepts a delta and then put whatever code you want in there. Okay, hope that's useful to some of you.